One of my grandpas loved telling corny jokes. Anytime we'd be driving past a cemetery, he'd turn and say, "Hey Jonathan, how many dead people do you think there are in that cemetery?" I'd quick try and count a few headstones, do some math in my head before venturing a guess, and then he'd say, "Nope, it's all of them." That joke isn't any funnier now than it was when I was a kid, but the truth that is behind it is much more sobering to me with each and every passing year. Not only are all of the people in a cemetery dead, but the path for all people eventually leads to a cemetery. And doesn't that just ruin everything? If you've ever had a difficult week of work coming up, you know that it has a tendency to even ruin the weekend that comes before it. And in the very same way, our own death, if we're willing to actually face it, has a way of taking the joy out of life. How can we enjoy even a single step of the journey on our path if we know that that path eventually leads to a cemetery? This week we're talking about a pivotal week in the life of Jesus when he began to talk in crystal clear terms about the path that lay ahead for him and his disciples. He made it very clear that that path included suffering and death, but he also made it very clear that that wasn't the end. Even as he was coming down from that mountain where all of his glory had been unveiled, he said to his disciples, "Don't tell anyone what you have seen until I have risen from the dead." Yes, for us Christians, our path does eventually lead to a cemetery, but because of Jesus, that's not where the path ends. Jesus has already paved the way beyond the cemetery, and where he has gone, we will surely follow. Because of Jesus, the cemetery is not our destination. It's not the finish line. It's just a pit stop along the way. Not only does that mean that there are endless joys waiting for us, it also means that death has been completely robbed of its power to steal the joy out of life. Instead, with the Apostle Paul, we can almost taunt death because it has been robbed of its power. Paul said to the Corinthians, "Where, O death, is your victory? Where, O death, is your sting? Thanks be to God. He gives us the victory through our Lord Jesus Christ." There's a cemetery in a small Wisconsin town where my grandpa's body is now laid to rest. And I would love nothing more than to be at that cemetery when Jesus comes back on the last day, because I'd like to think my grandpa has one more corny joke left in him. Right after he steps out of his own grave, he'd turn to his wife and he'd say, "Helen, take a look around. How many living people do you think there are in this cemetery?" And maybe she'd look and quick try and count heads, do a little math, and then venture a guess, and he'd say, "Nope, it's all of them." Thanks be to God that that victory is ours in Jesus Christ.
In our house, we have this saying that goes like this: "You first makes us blessed, but me first makes a mess." We find out whenever there's drama, whenever things are falling apart at home, with our kids, with our marriage, it's always because we're thinking of ourselves first. And that's why I wrote this little book called The Power of Second. It's exploring this controversial idea in the Bible of submission, of putting each other first. I hope you have a chance to read it, because it's going to focus on the great things that Jesus did when he put us first, that really inspire us to look at other people and say, "You first."